back in Central Florida, and it feels good to be back.
This time I'll have 3 participants joining me. We'll be spending 5 days training in bushcraft skills. Florida's abundance in resources and its milder temperatures in winter make it an absolutely ideal location to do some training. The area that we'll be in consists mainly of sand pine and saw palmetto, although the riparian area that we'll be camping nearby has an abundance of very large rainforest style trees like cedar, cypress, palms, and much more. Saw palmetto is named for the thorns that run on the sides of the palm fronds. These are short little palms and make it very tough to hike through them when you're off trail.
Just a little mouse was running around under these canopies. We trapped it underneath one of these palm fronds. He lifted it up and I just one swipe.
That's a good size too.
Yeah.
So that's our dinner, first animal. Perfect. So you happy with that cookery of yours?
Yeah. This blade is bad.
Look at that. Nice.
First use.
Man, that's accurate too. I'm impressed.
Dude,
good job.
It was impressive.
This is the water vine, found in jungle environments around the world. Extremely useful for hydrating as it produces naturally sterilized water. Always avoid vines that produce a white milky sap. We found a great place to camp, and our sleeping system simply consists of a tarp and a hammock. It's important to stay dry in this environment and off the ground where there could be snakes and harmful insects. Close to camp, I find a very useful yucca plant. This was used by Native Americans to make natural rope. In addition to the leaves, they would also use the roots to make a natural soap. So what I'm going to do is use both items. I'm going to use the root to make a soap so we can wash our dishes, and I'm also going to use the leaves to reverse wrap into a piece of rope. That way I can get a bow drill fire going without having any man-made cordage. I've commonly found that most types of yuccas and agaves, or any plants that grow in the rosetta type formation, will have leaves that will be adequate enough for making rope. How strong the rope will be will depend on the type of plant, but it's always worth trying out when in doubt. The first step for making cordage is to scrape off the waxy layer that exists on the top and the bottom of the leaf. Scrape in one direction, not back and forth, as to not damage the plant fibers. The next step is to pull the fibers apart, separating them into the smallest strands possible. Then you can bunch up the strands, fold them in half, and then start the twisting process. The exact details of how this can be done can be seen in previous videos of mine. I use the loop at the start of my rope to wrap around the bow. The bow can be any type of wood. I prefer it to not have much flex in it, and I don't want too much of a bow shape. I simply slip the loop over the fork end of the bow. This is the easiest way to do it when you're using natural cordage. For tinder, I'm going to use the husk-like material that's produced at the base of the saw palmetto fronds. And my friction fire kit is made out of the palm frond from a cabbage palm. To operate the bow drill with natural cordage, I like to wrap it around my hand. That way I can control the tension, as there is no stretch in this material, and I want to make sure that I don't over tighten it as it will break. Natural cordage is very susceptible to breaking from the friction process, so you will only have limited amount of tries to get a fire going. It's important to make every attempt count. Doesn't matter who you are, but making fire this way always brings out a primal satisfaction which never gets old. So earlier today, Brandon got a mouse, literally cut a mouse in half with his knife, and that has allowed us to catch fish because it's bait. So we've skinned the mouse right there, and we're getting some tilapia right now with that bait, so I think we'll be eating pretty good tonight.
Got one.
Oh,
Shit, another one, dude. Holy fuck.
Nice. Got one. One right there. So that's three. 3 for 3.
Lovely necklace you got there. What have you got?
So,
Look at that.
1, 2,
Perfect.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
9 fish. Yep, 9 fish for 4 of us. So that's gonna feed us pretty good tonight.
Team effort.
Brandon did well, man. Brandon, I think you got the lion's share of those fish.
He's a slayer.
Good job, guys.
To descale a fish, just use a knife and scrape from the tail towards the head. You want to remove all of these as they're hard and not really edible. You want to gut the fish too, removing all the guts including the gills. And finally, bon appetit. This area is abundant with jungle vines. I want to take advantage of that and make a basket style fish trap. However, I'm going to make it very small and it's going to be aimed at crawdads or freshwater crayfish instead of actual fish. I will start with making a loop out of the vines, which will be the opening to my funnel. I will use strips of saw palmetto fronds to create the longitudinal length of my funnel. I will then use jungle vines to weave in between them. The next step is to make the inner funnel. This is more or less the same process, however it requires 2 loops, of which the smaller loop dictates the size of the animal that you want to trap. Place the inner funnel inside the main fish trap and attach it by pushing small pieces of sticks or stakes in through the sides so that it will not move. When baiting a fish trap, it is very important to use a stake to keep the bait in the central part of the trap. You do not want it touching the sides where a crawdad or fish could gnaw at it without needing to go inside the trap. Now with my trap complete, I'm going to get it in the water and see if we have any luck.
Alright, so pulled the trap out of the water. Didn't have success first day, second day. Looks like we got a little crawdad in here, which is what we were going for. I thought there'd be more, but there hasn't been that much, so let's take a look. There we go. Little freshwater crayfish.
Crayfish, or otherwise known as crawdads or yabbies in Australia, are great survival food, loaded with protein and very tasty. Best way to cook these is to boil them. That way you don't lose any of the meat, the fat, or the nutrients. You'll maximize on the nutrition from such a small meal.
So I like to go right in the center right there. Make a cut. Seeing as though we're going to split this 4 ways. Oh, that's soft. That's soft. And then, like a spatchcock chicken, open it up. Obviously, that's all the good stuff in the tail, but there is some stuff in the head that's worth eating because it's got a lot of nutrients. So good. Doesn't need anything. Doesn't need salt, doesn't need anything. It's fantastic the way it is. So this is the Mora Companion. It's a knife that a lot of people in the bushcraft survival community know of, and that's for good reason.
it is a fantastic knife for the price. In my opinion, cannot be beaten. So for anywhere from 15 to 20 bucks, you get a knife that, in my opinion, has such a phenomenal shape to the blade. A Scandi type blade with a Scandi grind makes it easy to sharpen, and it's just the right length in order to whittle effectively. And although this would be considered a rat tail tang, so it's not a full tang, the knife blade doesn't extend all the way to the back of the handle, I have still yet to break one. So there is something to be said about how they mold this handle around the blade. The weight is phenomenal. It's really lightweight, so if you like carrying your knife around the neck, it's ideal. And anyone that's really kind of just getting into this and not really sure of what knife to get, I always recommend this one because it's inexpensive. So if you're going through your learning stages of how to use a knife effectively and you end up breaking it or damaging it, buy another one. Not that big of a deal. As far as spending $150 on a really good quality high carbon steel blade, that could be wasted money if you damage your blade because you don't know how to use it effectively. So big shout out to Mora. I know they've got some new Bushcraft knives on the line now, which look absolutely amazing. So definitely big props to Mora. Love their knives. Definitely a big supporter of their products. So keep that in mind. Making ash cakes over the fire has always been one of my favorite type of bush foods. In this example, I'm going to show you how if you take some oatmeal, mix a little bit of water to where it's really stodgy and thick, you can make these cakes, and instead of cooking them straight on the ash, which I would usually do, in this example, I'm going to cook them on the lid of my pot. Oats are so practical for the bush. They're light to carry and you get a good amount of calories for their weight. They store for long periods, and those factors make them ideal. If you don't have a steel pan or a lid from a pot, you can just use a flat rock which you place in the coals. It'll work the same, it'll just take longer to heat up.
Oatmeal ash cakes. How was it?
It's so good.
Let's get back to boiling for a second. If you have access to fish, I recommend boiling the entire fish, including the head. There is so much nutrition in the head that really shouldn't go to waste. In the bush, I will often make broths using fish head soup. And in this example, I've used sweet potato mixed in. It makes a delicious meal. I love my fish soups, but I gotta say, as far as taste goes, frying a fish in a pan still tastes better. An amazing wild food that we'll be harvesting in this region is the heart of palm. We could live off this food alone for weeks.
This is the cabbage palm. This is one of the fronds that is peeled off, and there's a bit of a consistency change at the bottom, so you can eat this. And it's good. But this is the real stuff right here. Soft. This is the heart of palm. There's a lot of it. Great survival food.
This wild food not only tastes great, but it's very nutritious. It's high in vitamin B and potassium. It's important to mention that this was the only cabbage palm that we harvested, as taking the heart will kill the plant. The saw palmetto, however, does not die when you harvest the heart, and that's what we ate mainly. This is the smaller saw palmetto, which is just as tasty. Every night the catfish seem to come on the bite. I find that this is a very underrated fish, as it is absolutely delicious. It does not have scales, and I find the skin very tasty with a high fat content. You do have to be careful when handling them, as they have barbs coming out each side and from the dorsal fin and can cause injury. We decided to smoke these fish all night long. This was a time-consuming process, however, the next day when we ate them, the flavor was unbelievable. Smoking is a great way to store fish. You need to make sure that you completely dehydrate the flesh, and then you can store it for long periods of time.
A little bit of crawdad for breakfast, a last bit of palm heart. Time to head back to civilization, which is always a depressing moment, but it has to be done. So hope you enjoyed watching this video. We've had a lot of fun out here, this group, and we've eaten really well. So hope you learned something. Please subscribe. Adios.